Hey, welcome to Your Personal Health. I'm Jeff Harrison, and here in just a minute, we're going to have Dr. Burris and Dr. Kim come in and join us. But I want to bring up to date on what we've been doing. We've been, over the last few weeks, we've been talking about babies and that 0 to 6 month time frame for parents with newborns, or maybe you're expecting a baby, anytime soon, and you're just not sure, hey, exactly, or maybe you're stressed out over exactly what to do next. If so, you're in the right place. Dr. Burris is a pediatrician, and Dr. Kim is a family care physician and a primary care physician. And they have a place called Coachella Valley Direct Primary Care. And they're cutting out this section of their day to take on live conversation with you as a parent who may have a question or two about your baby's health. If you missed it last week, we talked about some things that are gooey and black and tarry in color. I'll leave it to that. You have to go back and check that out on the channel. I'm sure at this point, Dr. Kim and Dr. Burris are remembering exactly what we talked about. This week, we're going to talk about something that is incredibly important, because I remember as a kid growing up, and my older sister, when I would go visit, there was always that time when a baby was crying or whatnot, and or maybe I'd walk in the house and it was like, shh, be so quiet, the baby just got to sleep. I want to kind of peel back the layer today with Dr. Kim and Dr. Burris and talk to them about sleep and the baby. And because we've all heard that as like, hey, the baby's crying, let them cry themselves to sleep, things like that. As a newborn parent, I'm sure that freaks you out, because it just tears your heart up, because that really, at some point, that was a part of you. And so today we're going to talk about sleep and everything, not to put you to sleep, but to make sure you understand what it's all about. So let's bring Dr. Burris, Dr. Kim in. Hey guys, welcome.
Hi, Jeff.
Hello.
Well, today is a day we're going to talk about sleep and some of the questions that come around sleep. And there's always those odd things of like, this newborn is I'm going to say, maybe it's not like a young pet. Like, I mean, we have cats, they seem to sleep all the time. And as a new parent, I would think when the baby is awake, it's like, it's that fun time, but it's also that stressful time. Like, are they making that noise because they're upset? Are they wet? Are they not feeling well? But today we want to talk about sleep and why that is important to understand their rhythm when they're young. So I'm just going to kind of turn over to you and tell us about sleep, some of the things that a new parent should be aware of, and just take it away.
Well, actually, sleep is probably the top two most important things your baby's going to do. Eat and sleep is basically the majority of their work that first year in life. And they spend the majority of their time sleeping, especially in the first few weeks. And that means that it's a time that it's not just we ignore, but we also want to pay attention to it, because it's very important in the development of a baby. Because of that, there are also a lot of strong feelings around the issue of sleep. And I think figuring out how your baby sleeps and how that fits within your family structure is probably one of those things that is, to me, the most it's like a really good window into your family's values and dynamics. And although that sounds like therapy, like, truthfully, how you decide to handle the issue of your infant sleeping is going to be determined a lot by the types of people that you are, your personalities, your structure, your preferences. They just all go into it. Having said that, there are some really important principles around the issue of sleep that, as a doctor, this is when I put my doctor hat on and I say, make it work for you, but remember these principles, because they actually make a sleeping safe or not safe for your infant. So, sleeping in an infant is probably, in that first few weeks, about 20 hours a day. So that's a lot of time. And initially, it's very helpful to have that much downtime as a parent because you need it to recover yourself and to set some patterns in place. But it doesn't feel like they're sleeping that much. It feels like they're not sleeping at all. And so what happens is they sleep for shorter periods of time and wake up. So that means that you're not having that lengthy chunk of time for you to sleep, which allows you to feel rested. So as parents, the baby's sleeping 18 to 20 hours a day, but you're sleeping like 2. So it's this mismatch. Um, so let's talk a little bit about the reason why we as physicians have anything to say at all about infants and the way they sleep. And the primary reason is something called sudden infant death syndrome. Um, Sudden infant death syndrome is known by the acronym SIDS, and it's probably not just one thing, but it describes a healthy infant who is found dead. And there is other names for it, such as crib death, and it's something that is so traumatizing. And honestly, we have seen it as doctors that it's traumatizing enough for us as a physician to make this an issue that I'm okay to hurt some feelings by giving people some facts. In the recent, I would say, 10 years, there's been a return to the concept of the family bed or co-sleeping, where you have all your children in bed with you, or especially the newborn, especially when they're breastfeeding. The benefit of that is that it's easier for the mom to breastfeed because you don't have to get up, and you're also having the benefit of having that infant very close to you. So there's this feeling of security with that. So you feel like you're right there, the baby's right there, you're close, you're bonding, and if something goes wrong, you're right there to deal with it. The problem with that is that an adult bed is not a safe environment for an infant, especially with adults in it who are not awake. And the reason for that is an infant really can't move much. They don't have good head control yet. They can't lift their head, and their airway is very small. So it doesn't take much for them to smother or to have their airflow restricted to the point where they can't breathe. So because of that, the recommendations are that an infant sleep in their own space on a firm mattress on their back and with nothing in the crib that could potentially cover their face. So things like baby bumpers, blankets, stuffed animals. All of this is essentially for that first month or 2 of life. Once a baby is older and can roll over on their own and lift their own head, this level of minimalism is no longer necessary. But in this first couple months of life, really is recommended to have a baby back sleeping in their own space on a firm mattress without any plush things around. Swaddling is good. Some babies love to be swaddled. After a while, they'll kick it off and get cold. So in those cases, it can help to swaddle the baby and then put them in sort of, it looks like sort of a potato sack where you put the baby inside something and zip it up so that it fits around the neck. Some you can put the arms out or you can leave them in if you've swallowed them. But that's an extra layer. It's almost like a wearable blanket that they cannot kick off and can't cover their face. So this is very controversial in the sense that people feel very strongly that their baby is better off in their bed. The data, however, shows that infants who sleep with the parents have a much higher rate of sudden infant death syndrome. And because of that, I do draw a line with this. I don't know if you've gotten the feel from me that most of the time I'm, what works for you, you can work with it. It's okay. There's no black and whites, and I can be very flexible with different parenting styles. But this one is about life and death, so I am a little less flexible.
Is there anything else? I mean, that was quite the.
I'm a little.
She got us fired right away, didn't she? Just went. I like that, and you do, Dr. Burris. You're usually pretty. You're pretty. I'm going to say careful to allow that flexibility. And I sensed in your conversation or the information today is, there's enough proof, and unfortunately, in the infant dying in that situation, the sudden infant death syndrome, that there is no black and white, or excuse me, there is no gray area. It's black and white. In that first couple of months, as you say, put the baby in their own bed, in their crib, on a firm mattress, with sleeping on their back. That is the highest rate of success. With that, I have to ask a question. Then why do they call it crib death if that still occurs in the crib? Or is there a connection to that, or they just kind of lump everything under this umbrella?
The term crib death is from the 1800s, and it's cribs are variable, and at that time the babies, there was no central heat, so the babies would be wrapped and there would be lots of blankets around them. They might even be placed very close to a heating source like a fire or a radiator. So there are a lot of things in that time period that were pretty dangerous that were done out of necessity, basically to prevent babies from freezing to death. So crib death really that term comes from there. Having said that, there are still babies that pass away even sleeping in the ideal position. And it's not always known the cause of them. It's just that the risk of it is drastically reduced. And we've probably reduced most of the respiratory related deaths that happen from the airway being suffocated, basically. The other thing is that a lot of people worry that if they put their baby on their back to sleep, that they will choke, that they'll spit up and choke on their vomit. And it is true that if you place a baby on their back, they do have more acid reflux. And this was actually a significant problem for our child as well. There are things that you can do if your baby is having those problems. The data, they actually looked at this question to say, hey, are babies actually choking on vomit? Is putting them on their back causing problems? And the answer is they reflux more, but they don't die more. They don't choke. But they may be waking up more and crying more and having more disruptive sleep, which means your life is worse. So if that's happening, you can actually raise one side of the mattress. So instead of being completely flat, their head, well, if this is their head is slightly elevated. So they have a little incline there. They're still laying on their back, but you're using gravity to help avoid that reflux. And the way you do that is by raising one side of the mattress, by putting something underneath the mattress on one side. Some people will jury rig books, or they'll buy a foam wedge to put under one side of the mattress to raise it up a little. But there are ways to kind of address the reflux issue. But honestly, only in the most severe of cases where an infant is really having difficulty to the point where they may need surgery, would those babies be put stomach down or face down. Also, you will see babies in the hospital be placed in that position, primarily when they're already intubated. So it's to help their lungs work a little bit. It's called proning, which we also do with COVID. But in those cases, we're protecting their airways. So if you see that in the hospital, it doesn't mean necessarily that we're advising people do it at home.
So really what we're talking about here is just some good fundamental things that a parent or parents with a newborn infant should kind of know, that, having that co-sleep in your family bed, if you will. There are some conveniences, but the downside of how you've discussed it, of adding to the chance of that child being suffocated by an adult, rolling over, which would be devastating, is too high. And to put them in their own bed, sleeping on their back, and if they need to have the elevator, you explain that, of raising the one end where their head is, and giving them that time. Now, you said for about how long that they should really focus on this? Is that first 2-3 months? Is it the first 2 or 3 weeks? What period of time is it definitely they should be in their own bed?
For a newborn, probably the first 4 to 6 months. A lot depends on your baby and how fast they're developing. There's probably a period of time where parents recognize that getting the baby out of their bed is going to be really helpful. And that's when they start becoming more active. And certainly when a baby can roll over on their own, which is between 4 to 6 months, because if you're asleep and the baby decides to climb over you and roll off the bed, that's no fun either. So most people, will sort of, as the baby develops and becomes more mobile, will get to the point where they realize, we need a little more protection for this child if we're asleep. Especially when they start being able to pull up, to stand and to jump up and down. Having them in their crib gives them basically a little space to move around and play if they wake up a little before you. Also, the place where I am super flexible is on the approach that people take to initiating sleep and the sleep structure of their child. This goes from people who are all the way on the end of everything is very regimented and this is how it's going to work, and we're down to the 15-minute mark here and this is what we're doing and I've got my timer out, all the way to people who are so freeform they couldn't even tell you what their baby's sleeping patterns are because it just sort of happens when it happens. And truth be told, your child will most likely adjust to whatever structure you put into place, whether it's super structured, medium structured, or lightly structured. So pick the structure that's going to work best for you, personality-wise and family dynamics and structure-wise. If you have a child who's going back and forth between multiple places, like if you have a child who's going to be at grandma's and grandpa's house a couple days a week, and maybe at daycare a few times a week, and at home a few times a week, that child is likely going to adjust to multiple different styles. This is not a bad thing, but it means that you're not likely to be successful trying to keep them on a super regimented structure. If the child is at home constantly with one caregiver, you can kind of choose whatever structure you want because you'll be able to have it be consistent. Your child will grow up and sleep at night, no matter which approach you use. I just like to put that out there. We have discovered this. has been true for us. So I was very regimented with our first child because I was reading a book and it said, if you do X, Y, and Z, your child will sleep through the night by 3 months old. And I said, perfect. I'm going back to work in 3 months. I need this to happen. I need this baby to sleep through the night. So we're going to stay on this regimen. Did that happen?
Eventually,
yeah. So apparently my child had not read the book, did not understand that she was supposed to immediately sleep through the night at 3 months. And so it took her a little longer, but she did get there. And with the second child, I became much less regimented out of necessity. And with our third child, I'm not really sure what we did. I don't know. Can you remember?
you have a third child? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
So, yeah.
On the practical side, I was thinking about one of the things that at least no one told us is that when you're choosing a crib or you're getting a hand-me-down, you do have to be careful because a lot of the manufacturers every couple of years have a recall because they learn new safety features. They learn this is not good. So be careful in what you're getting in terms of where you're putting it doesn't, some people don't use a crib, they use something else, but just make sure that it hasn't been recalled so that you're not using something that is known
potentially
to have problems.
dangerous. Yeah. Many of the cribs initially had movable sides where you could go up and down, and those now have been completely outlawed because there were multiple instances of children either becoming entrapped or having serious injuries from those sides. So now what you'll find is all cribs have very specific requirements for how much spacing they can have in the openings. And then also they must have fixed sides. They can't move. So there are some features that are nice with cribs. For instance, usually the level of the mattress can be adjusted. So as the child grows, you can lower it. When they're young, it's nice to have them close to the top so you don't have to bend over as far. But as they start to be able to sit up and stand up, you want to lower that so they don't accidentally fall out. Secondly, there are always those escape artists. There's always kids that are just really good at getting out of cribs. And it's not going to happen in the first month of life, but you should be aware that there's a point at which it's probably just safer to put the mattress on the floor. And if you notice that your 7-month-old or 8-month-old is like routinely getting one leg up over that edge of that crib and you can't lower it anymore, it's probably smart to just go ahead and transition out of that to a safer option.
Do you want to touch on the colicky baby? Because I know every kid is going to have some period of colickiness. I am convinced. So.
Yeah. Well, colic is one of those things. Can you explain what colic is?
Well, in my dad term, it's a baby that just doesn't seem to be able to be soothed. They're not dirty. You've changed their diaper. They've been fed, but somehow they just out of the blue, they start crying. They can cry for long periods of time. And it happens usually in the evening, at least for our kids. And I think for most kids, and it doesn't happen right away. I think it's
around 6 weeks is when it usually sets in.
And I think, there's a lot of speculation as to why it's occurring. In my brain, it makes sense that as you're neurologically developing, all these inputs and changes and they have to affect the baby.
Mm-hmm.
And there are numerous methods on how to help, but really persistence and patience is the key. You mentioned swaddling, there's the shushing, there's the swaying. I know I'm missing a couple more S's, but
so I think your point is really good in that A, it's normal. B, it's not forever. It's a phase. usually is gone in a few weeks to a couple months. They will grow out of it. And all you have to do is make sure that the baby's well fed, not in pain, nothing's hurting them, and they don't have a wet or dirty diaper. And then keep your patience. And this is a phase where people are at high risk for child abuse. And I always like to put out there, if you don't think it's possible for you to abuse your child, that's
well, let's not say abuse.
Abuse,
This
okay.
is shaken baby syndrome.
Yeah, so if you think that you are incapable of getting to the point where you might harm a child inadvertently, then you're at risk for doing it.
because you're sleep deprived. This is something that's very frustrating because this is the 12th night in a row that your baby's crying, hour, 2-3 hours at a time.
Yeah.
And it can be frustrating.
And like you said, it tends to happen in the evening when you are usually exhausted,
right.
Maybe coming home from work, maybe a partner's coming home from work and they're stressed. There is also a lot of stress that comes financially from having an infant, either from loss of income or from extra expenses or a combination of the two. So this is a very stressful, vulnerable time for a lot of families. And then when you add on a colicky baby who just won't stop crying, it really increases the stress level within the household. So if this is where people find themselves, it's important to be honest about it and say, hey, we are at our limit. Like, we need a break. And this is where you need your extended village. You need somebody to come in and say, hey, I'm going to give you a 2-hour break tonight while your baby cries. And I'm going to sit there and either hold them or watch them in their swing or watch them in their playpen or just hang out with them. And you can go and go for a walk. You can go sit on the beach. You can just go into your room and cry for 2 hours, whatever you need to do. And having that is huge. So if you know a new parent in your life and there's in this stage, and it is worthwhile making this very specific offer, most parents will resist help because they don't want to burden someone with a baby that's really cranky. And if you are an experienced parent and you've been through this, or even if you're just a loving supporter who can come in and say, you know what, I'll listen to your baby cry. This can be a lifesaver for families. And the other thing is, if you get to the point where you're just super frustrated, it's much better to place your baby in a safe position, something like a pack and play or in their crib, and just step outside for 5 minutes and take a few breaths. There's nothing wrong with doing that. You don't want to leave the house for an hour, but you certainly can take a couple minutes to sort of let yourself relax a bit, because this is a very natural thing to need to do.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think prevention is probably the best thing is, know that you're going to get frustrated, know that you're going to get tired, know that you're going to have, dynamics change in the house, and, plan for, like you said, little breaks. And, if you can have extended family or friends help you, even just like you said, 1 or 2 hours, that really can make a world of a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing gift. Probably the best gift you can give a new parent is someone who can come in, who's not going to judge you on the state of the mess of your house, or, if it's just come in, be there, and lend a hand.
I think you said something in the last show, or the other show, that was very important too, that it's not because of the formula that they're having.
Oh, yeah.
That colicky babies are colicky not because they're intolerant. Now, it's not that all babies can't be, lactose intolerant or something, but a good majority, whether you change the formula or not, this is the cycle they're going to go through.
Indeed. Yeah. So it's one of those things that people often try to find a cause. They just, are so desperate that they keep changing formulas, or they'll think there's something wrong. But colic has a very specific pattern. Like you said, it's usually in the evening, and it's usually for 1 to 3 hours. And the babies are inconsolable, but afterwards they're 100% fine. They don't necessarily display any signs of illness. So this is not a baby who's having diarrhea, or a baby that's not growing well, or a baby that's got a fever. That's a totally different scenario. This is a completely healthy baby that just cries for 2 or 3 hours at a time.
Right. And if you have any questions, you definitely should talk to your pediatrician or your family practice provider, because that's what they're there for, to help with resources and help you, even if it's something that you're just, you don't know what's going on. So
yeah.
Yeah, I can think of the times where, again, I'm gonna go back to my sisters, because I don't have any children, and I remember it seemed like the baby just cried all the time, and I didn't get it. And what you were saying was, sometimes that parent just needs to have a break, and it's amazing. Next show, I want to talk a little bit about, if you're open to this, about a new parent and really the stress that they go through and how to deal with it. It sounds like this is one of those times where getting some outside help. In fact, I've seen people, on the show today and live, come in and go out, and I'm thinking, as you describe being a parent, and I'm glad I'm of that age, I'm not going to be a parent, that having an extra time to maybe see this show is highly unlikely. So you may know someone who is either expecting a child, or they have that 0 to 6 month or a little older, and they need some help. This is a good thing to share with them. So when the baby is theoretically sleeping in that 20-hour period and you're getting your 1 hour of sleep, carve out a little bit of time and see that some of these things, as Dr. Burris and Dr. Kim are describing, are normal. It's not you failing as a parent. Newborn parent, you're not failing. This is just part of that newborn baby. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And, I think like with a lot of things, we get this image maybe from media, or our, superficial understanding of what other people's experiences are. People like to put a pretty face on things. So you can start to believe that you're supposed to be having this postcard Instagram experience, whereas reality for everyone is quite different, and that's normal.
Well, I love the way you did normalize this today, and started right off by saying, the baby's sleeping about 20 hours a night, or a day, but ironically, the parent is getting like an hour of sleep. I know sleep deprivation definitely leads to some unnecessary stress. And as you said, when you have a colicky baby, one of the things you need is patience. And it seems like patience is worn thin when you're in a situation of lack of sleep. So I'd love to talk more about that. And hey, the idea of having that support team, of saying, hey, I'm tagging out. I've gone 3 rounds with the bear, and I need to tag out just for a little bit and catch my breath. I need to walk outside and realize there are some things that are somewhat normal. I'm sure that's happening. You guys, your parents, did you have that type of support when you were having your first baby?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I even got creative enough where when I was at home on my day off, I would put one of our oldest in the high chair. She'd be eating. I would Zoom my mom and say, can you just watch her and let me know? Because I'd take my phone upstairs. I'd take a quick shower, the 20-minute shower, I'd come back down. But that way I knew So that's how creative I got with
I
my.
never knew you did that.
Uh-oh, trouble, trouble. You mean you left the baby with a Zoom call?
She was able to eat. She was happy, and mom, was interacting with her. I was taking a shower.
Oh my goodness.
If something happened, she could call me. I would come down. But that's how the 20 minutes was so important to be able to function.
I have a feeling there's going to be some external conversation or from after the show conversation going on here about that. So, yeah, you never know what you're going to hear right here on Your Personal Health with Dr. Burris and Dr. Kim. Guys, you know what? This has been very helpful. We've had a lot of people come in and out throughout the show. Really appreciate it. And thanks for taking extra time. We're talking about sleep and your baby's health and how important that is. And before I let you go, I just want to hit one other high point. You talked about whether you're regimented, you're semi, or you're just kind of, hey, whatever happens, happens, that your baby will adapt and adopt to that, whatever you want to do. And I think of that whole psychology thing of, up to about age of 7, the mind is, our subconscious is pretty wide open and we're taking all these things. We're just soft clay. So you don't have to be too rigid or too wild or too worried about that. Is that kind of what you're saying about that process?
Yes, there are some caveats to that. There are children with special needs who are going to require a certain type of structure. So I do want to say there are caveats to that, either around a medical problem or a neurologic difference. But for most children, they're really gonna adapt to what the routine is that you set up, or lack thereof. But most of us function better with some structure rather than no structure whatsoever. But the amount of structure that you put in should work for your family and your situation.
Fantastic. Well, guys, I want to thank you again for spending the day with us or the morning with us here on Monday mornings. It is a live program from 11:30 to around 12 o'clock. And we do take your questions. Dr. Burris and Dr. Kim are both primary care physicians, with Dr. Kim also, or Dr. Burris also being a pediatrician. They own a company called Coachella Valley Direct Primary Care, located in Rancho Mirage, California, serving you as a medical care provider in a little different way. If you take just a second, explain how that works. And it's a member-based program. We'd really appreciate it. And then we'll let you go.
Yeah, so we have a clinic where you can come in and talk to us. We decided to open up a clinic that's called a direct primary care, where we have a relationship with each patient. As Jeff was saying, it's a membership, kind of like a gym, and we find that this serves us and our patients better, because we're now able to really devote our attention to each single person. And, there's no middle person getting involved to decide what's best or not. It's something that you can get same day, next day visits. We've been virtual this whole pandemic if we needed to. We do bring people in when we can, and we can just take care of problems that are able to be dealt with in a very friendly way, where it really doesn't intrude on your lifestyle, and so that's what we wanted. We wanted where both everyone felt like people were taken care of, and this is something that everyone really enjoys in our clinic. Is there anything you wanted to add, or?
No, I think you described it well.
Guys, I just want to again say thank you. Make sure to join us every Monday at 11:30. We talk about your personal health. This focus is on your baby's health. That 0 to 6 month for a patient or for parents as well as the baby. And today we talked about sleep. And next week we'll have another perfect topic that we're going to talk about. I was going to say, can we talk about the parents' health? And how do you, as parents of newborns, how do you stay healthy? Because it's important that hey, you're the only lifeline. If you're that rope that's frayed and they're hanging on by a thread, that's probably not a good idea. So I'd love for you to really kind of go back in the archives and say, hey, this is what we did as, let's face it, 2 doctors, probably going through residency at some point with those kiddos, and you are having kids. What did you do? I'd love for you to dig in and tell us a little bit about that, and offer those solutions to some of the parents that are thinking, how am I going to do this? This is crazy. I got a full-time job, all of this, and I'd like to hear about that. Great.
Sure, absolutely.
So let's do that next week. Until next time, my name is Jeff Harrison, along with Dr. Kim, Dr. Burris. You guys have a great week. Stay healthy. And if you have any questions, make sure to put them in the comment section, and information below. Coachella Valley Direct Primary Care. If you're saying, hey, you know what? I have to get off of this healthcare roller coaster that I've been on. I can't wait 6 weeks or 3 weeks to get in to see my doctor. I want to get into him now. Give Dr. Burris, give Dr. Kim a call at Coachella Valley Direct Primary Care. It's 760-642-5549, or you can just go to their website at CoachellaValleyDPC.com for more information. Guys, have a great week. We'll see you next week. Thank you.
Right.